Camus Boats, from the mind of Earl Bentz. Excellence, tradition, and service, all part of the Camus advantage. On the water, perfection. This is your next boat. Build your next boat at camusboats.com. Ducket Fishing, pro-driven rods, reels, and baits. The choice of champions. Check out ducketfishing.com to see what everybody's talking about. Ducket Fishing, pro-driven. In the recent WONBASS event up there about a week ago, obviously John Pearl weighed in 102 pounds over 3 days, and you were right on his tail. You had 101 pounds over 3 days. What did you find in practice? Was it what you expected? I guess we're going to ask, how did you get him?
Yeah. And kind of to go back real quick, just for a second, when I did win 2 years ago, I won on a glide bait.
Okay.
And I won in the middle of summer on a glide bait. So, it's that glide bait bite can be the best bite on the lake, 100%. I just wanted to throw that in there because you can 100% win tournaments on this lake throwing a glide bait and a swim bait, and it's done all the time. Like, it is. Sometimes the swim bait is all you should be throwing, and it will outshine pretty much every other bait at times. But yeah, so this year, the bait fish like the threadfin shad and the silver sides are way more prevalent than I've seen in a while, and so a lot of these fish are focused on that bait fish. And with the way everything was set up this year, a lot of these fish were moving up to spawn, and kind of like maybe 2 weeks, a week and a half before the tournament, we had a little warm spell. And I actually kind of found my pattern then. I was out the first day. We had 2 or 3 warm days. I was out like the first warm day, and I didn't struggle. I caught a ton of fish. I just couldn't catch 6+ pounders to catch 30 pounds, which you kind of need on this lake right now. And then the next day I went out and I switched it up a little bit, and I started fishing around docks and that shade, and started finding a bunch of big ones suspended. And then I also caught fish around some bait balls that were up near the docks as well. And so after that,
scoping those fish?
Scoping all those fish on a minnow, and catching some also on a 10-inch swim bait, on a soft bait, a hog hunter, which is just kind of like a Huddleston. If you don't know, it's just a wedge tail 10-inch swim bait. And then, and a glide bait around the docks. But yeah, mainly focusing on a minnow. Sometimes I felt like if there's bigger fish and I caught one on a minnow, I'd throw back under there with the soft bait and try to pull out another big one. But yeah, so we had a little bit of a cold spell after those warm days, and I knew those fish would kind of stay. And once the tournament was gonna be there, it was gonna be warm again. So I was gonna hopefully keep getting more fish moving up, getting ready to spawn. And so in practice, that's all I did. I've pretty much fished almost every single stretch of docks on the lake. Fished some other areas where there's usually bait, or areas where I know they spawn and they might be setting up. And found quite a few areas. I did come up north one day in practice, and right then and there decided I'm not fishing up there in the tournament just because of how many boats were up here. I've done that before and tried to stick it out, and most of the time it just I end up shooting myself in the foot, because I love to fish up here. I'd rather fish up here than anywhere else on the lake. I know it the best, and I grew up on this side of the lake, so when you're fishing a little bass tracker, you kind of get good at fishing one part of the lake. So kind of right then and there, decided I'm going to go fish mid-lake and down south in the Rattlesnake Arm and the Redbud Arm, and figure out what I can find. And found a bunch of little stretches that had fish, better fish. The problem that I heard from most of the guys pre-fishing, is that when they went down there, it was tough, and then when they did catch one, and it was like 10 inches, they were non-keepers, and that was a big issue down there. I'd find a dock and be like, oh, there's a bunch, and I'd throw under there and catch a 10-incher. So definitely had to just fish a lot of water to find, those better fish. And the first day we had a high sky, a bluebird sky, a good sun, so I knew it was going to be set up right. Um, Focused on mid lake and rattlesnake arm, and fished for suspenders under docks with that minnow, and um, caught maybe 15, 20 fish. Not smashing them, but catching a good amount of fish. 7 fish, probably over 5.5. I think my smallest fish the first day was like 6'4" and had 35 or whatever. All 7 pounders. Other than that, I didn't have anything over 7.
I
And
was I
then,
was going to ask you, what was the smallest fish that you culled that week?
yeah, the smallest fish that I actually,
I'm sorry.
uh,
What was the biggest fish that you culled that week? Is what I meant
oh,
to
the
say.
biggest fish that I culled, I think was like a 6'6" the last day. The last day, my small fish was a 6'8".
How many times have you done that in tournaments up there?
Um, Honestly, not a lot in tournaments. I mean, 36 pounds is my biggest tournament bag ever, which
Yeah.
was the last day, and then 35 was my biggest bag ever until I did it again. But yeah, my up until that point, my biggest tournament bag up there was like 32.7 last year or 2 years ago actually. And but we were calling 5.5s, I
Wow.
mean that, but then, I got second and won, and then the next week I caught 32 pounds again and won. So then, 32 pounds, 33 pounds was like a winning bag. But like I said, um, this year the weights have just gone up dramatically. And the
Amazing.
amount of 7 pound, the amount of 7 to 8 pounders right now has gone up dramatically. But I mean, it's in the same sense of like, last year you could catch 5, 6 pounders, no problem. I mean, not no problem, but you could catch 5, 6 pounders weighing 31, 32 pounds and win the tournament. And then this year, it's taken more like 5, 7 pounders.
I mean, I'm looking at your weight, 35.37, 29.75, and 36.21 over 3 days. How often does a 29 and three-quarter pound bag hurt you in a tournament?
Yeah,
God,
not very often.
no.
Not very often, but yeah, I knew that weight probably would hurt me and probably end up,
That's amazing.
um but yeah, that second day, we had I knew the last 2 days we're gonna have a little bit of cloud cover, and so I wanted to focus on, some of my fish that were on those bait balls instead of the ones that were all suspending. And they were still suspenders, but off the docks on bait. And I pulled up to my a spot that I left to fish because I had a long day the second day, and caught a 6 pounder right away and broke one off, and then could not get any of my other fish to go, and so I left and fished what I fished the day before, and um, caught some fish. Had like that 1 6 pounder and 4 pounders, which on this lake isn't gonna cut it right now, and
Unbelievable.
um, I actually had a dock that had a couple pilings off the end of it that I saw big ones on. I couldn't get them to fire, and so I left and came back like 30 minutes later and caught a 9.5. Um, Tried catching some more, but they wouldn't bite. Um, Left it again and came back. They still didn't. I couldn't get another one still. Um, and then I ended my day over back where my bait was, and culled one more. I culled maybe one or two more times, but I still had 2 4.5s, which is why I had just under 30. So that 9.5
Yeah.
saved me the second day. And then the last day I just decided, I'm just gonna stick it out in my bait balls and see what happens, because my other fish, it was supposed to get windier that day, and it definitely was. And so I figured, a lot of those fish that I was catching under the docks, were going to be harder to catch, and especially the ones I was targeting. I was targeting a lot of the docks that most people wouldn't fish because either, because of clearance, only having 2 inches of clearance and can't get under there because the water's so high right now. Skipping it over boat lifts and stuff. I mean, I was just doing anything I could to do stuff I felt like other people were too scared to do.
Yeah.
um that idea of like hook it first and figure it out later. So Yeah, and then in that wind, I just didn't know if I was going to be able to, target those fish the same way. And so, yeah, I want to stay around the bait. And I had the last day I had like 29 pounds, and by 8 o'clock, and had an 8 pounder, so I was feeling good. Um, the bite shut off for a little bit, so I started running some new water, or not new water, but some different water I hadn't even fished yet in the tournament, and ended up catching another 7 pounder. Came back. They wouldn't bite, left again, didn't catch anything, came back, and then, from like 1 to 3:30, they were biting, and I culled, that's when I culled that 6.6. I had like two, I think I had a 5 pounder in there still, like a five something. I culled, and then I caught like a six, and then I caught like a 6.2, and then I caught a 6.4, and
Oh
then I
my
caught a
gosh.
6.8, and then I caught a 6.6, and then I caught a 6.8. Like it was just, you know, it was just 6 pounders galore. I might have caught another 7 pounder. I don't even know. I don't know. I had that last 2 hours of the bite window for me was awesome. I couldn't do any wrong. Every fish I hooked was over 6 pounds. Um, and then yeah, the last 2 hours of the day, I was honestly just begging for it to be over because the bite turned off and I didn't have anything else left. And I knew kind of because I was weighing some of my fish. I knew I had 100 pounds, and at that point, I was happy. That was my only goal going in the last day, which is crazy because my goal going into the tournament was just 30 pounds a day.
Yeah.
And then anything better was just a cherry on top. So
It's just
yeah,
absolutely amazing. I'm Keith Neiswanger. This is the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to reach us, please send us a direct message on Instagram at Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. Take care. Be safe. We'll talk to you next time.